The laughter started before he even reached the table. Daniel heard it, soft at first, then sharper, cutting through the low hum of the restaurant like broken glass. He paused at the entrance, fingers tightening around the small bouquet he'd bought with a week's worth of saved tips. For a moment, he considered turning back. But then he saw her. She was sitting alone, elegant yet distant, stirring her drink slowly as if time itself had slowed around her. Daniel inhaled, straightened his janitor's uniform jacket, and walked forward, unaware that this blind date was never meant to be real, and that by the end of the night, the very people mocking him would be wiping tears from their faces. Daniel had worked in the same corporate building for 11 years. He knew its floors better than most people knew their own homes. He knew which tiles creaked, which elevators stalled, and which offices stayed lit long after midnight. What most people didn't know was that he also knew the names of the people who worked there, their habits, their moods, their silent struggles. He listened while he cleaned, not to gossip, but because listening made people feel less alone. Still, to them, he was invisible. Just the janitor. The joke started in the break room. A few junior executives, bored and cruel, decided it would be hilarious to set Daniel up on a blind date with the company's newly appointed CEO. They didn't expect her to come. They didn't expect Daniel to say yes. And they certainly didn't expect what would happen next. The woman at the table was Claire Whitmore. She had taken over the company after its founder passed away, and her reputation preceded her: brilliant, ruthless, emotionally distant. She had agreed to the blind date out of sheer exhaustion. After years of boardrooms and betrayals, she wanted one evening without titles. She didn't know who her date would be. She only knew she was tired of being admired for the wrong reasons. When Daniel reached the table, the laughter behind him grew louder. Claire looked up. Her eyes met his, and something unreadable flickered across her face. Surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. Daniel swallowed his embarrassment and spoke first. "Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm sorry I'm late. The bus, you're right on time," she said gently, standing up. That single sentence silenced the laughter behind them. They sat. Daniel placed the flowers on the table, awkward and apologetic. "They're not much," he said. "But I wanted to bring something." Claire picked them up, studied them carefully, and smiled, a real smile, not the polite corporate one people wore around her. "No one's brought me flowers in years." As they talked, something strange happened. The world around them faded. Daniel didn't pretend to be anyone else. He spoke about his mother, who raised him alone. About losing his wife young and learning how to survive grief quietly. About how cleaning floors gave him peace because it reminded him that messes could be fixed. Claire listened, truly listened. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't being interviewed, challenged, or tested. She was simply a woman hearing another human being's truth. Meanwhile, at a nearby table, the coworkers watched in disbelief. This wasn't how the joke was supposed to go. He wasn't supposed to belong there. And yet, somehow, he did. When the bill arrived, Daniel reached for it without hesitation. Claire stopped him. "Let me," she said. Daniel shook his head. "I invited you. It's my responsibility." She studied him, and for the first time that night, her voice trembled slightly. "Do you know how rare that is?" By the time they stood to leave, the laughter was gone. Replaced by something heavier, something uncomfortable. And just as everyone thought the night was over, Claire turned, not to Daniel, but to the room watching them. Her voice carried, calm but firm. "I know why this happened," she said. "And tomorrow morning, we're going to talk about it." The silence that followed was suffocating. The next morning, the entire office was summoned to the main conference hall. Whispers raced through the corridors. Daniel almost didn't come. He thought he might be fired. Or worse, publicly humiliated. But when he entered, Claire was already there, standing at the front. She began speaking immediately. "I was invited on a blind date last night as a joke," she said. A joke meant to remind someone of their place. Her eyes scanned the room, then landed on Daniel. "But what I found was something none of you expected." The room was so quiet that even breathing felt loud. "I found kindness without agenda. Respect without fear. And dignity without a title." Some people shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at the floor. Claire continued, her voice thick with emotion now. "For years, I've been surrounded by people who wanted something from me. Last night, for the first time in a long time, I sat across from someone who didn't. She turned fully toward Daniel. Daniel, you reminded me that leadership isn't about power. It's about character. Tears filled her eyes, and she didn't bother hiding them. And to those who thought this was funny, understand this. The measure of a company isn't how it treats its executives. It's how it treats the people it thinks don't matter. People were crying openly now. Some from shame, some from realization. Claire took a breath. Effective immediately, Daniel will no longer be part of the janitorial staff. He will be leading our new employee wellness and support program. Because empathy should never be invisible. Daniel stood frozen, tears streaming down his face. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't expected it. All he had done was be himself. As the meeting ended, people approached him, not with mockery, but with apologies. With gratitude. With respect. Later that evening, Daniel and Claire sat on a quiet bench outside the building. No audience. No titles. I'm still just a janitor at heart, Daniel said softly. Claire smiled. And I'm still just a woman learning how to see people better. They sat in silence, comfortable and real. Because sometimes, the cruelest joke becomes the most powerful lesson. And sometimes, the person everyone laughs at is the one who teaches them how to be human. The room was already heavy with tension when Claire paused mid-sentence, but what she said next felt like a quiet storm rolling through every heart present. She looked directly at Daniel, then at everyone else, and asked a single question that no one was prepared to answer. When did we decide that someone's job title defines their worth? The words didn't sound angry. They sounded disappointed, and that hurt far more. Daniel stood near the back, wishing the floor would open beneath him. His hands trembled. He had spent his entire life avoiding attention, learning how to exist without being noticed. Now every eye was on him, and he felt exposed, like a private life had been dragged into public light. He wanted to leave. He wanted the moment to end. But Claire kept speaking, and something in her voice made him stay. She told them about her childhood, about watching her father clean offices at night after losing his business. How she used to sit in the hallway doing homework while he mopped floors, exhausted but proud. How she learned early that dignity had nothing to do with position and everything to do with how you treated people when no one was watching. Her voice cracked when she said, "Last night, sitting across from Daniel, I felt like I was sitting across from my father again." That was when the tears truly began. Not loud sobs, just quiet. Uncontrollable ones. The kind that come when truth finally finds its way past ego. A senior manager covered her mouth. One of the men who had planned the joke stared straight ahead, his face pale, realizing too late what cruelty really looked like. Daniel's knees felt weak. He hadn't known. He hadn't imagined that his simple words, his honesty, his presence could awaken something so deep in someone so powerful. He wasn't trying to teach a lesson. He was just trying to survive another lonely evening. Claire stepped down from the front of the room and walked toward him. Every step echoed. When she reached him, she spoke softly, but the room still heard. "You didn't know who I was last night. And that's exactly why this matters." She turned back to the employees. If respect only exists when power is present, then it isn't respect at all. The meeting ended without applause. It didn't need any. People left quietly, changed in ways they couldn't yet explain. Some stopped to speak to Daniel. Others couldn't meet his eyes. A few simply whispered, "I'm sorry." That afternoon, Daniel returned to the building, not with a mop, but with uncertainty. He sat alone in the small office Claire had arranged for him, staring at the blank walls. For the first time in years, he didn't know where he belonged. Change, even kind change, can be frightening when you've built your life around being unseen. Claire knocked gently before entering. She didn't sit behind a desk. She pulled up a chair next to him. "You don't have to become someone else," she said. "I just want you to help others feel less invisible." Daniel nodded slowly. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I spent years thinking my life didn't matter to anyone." Claire looked at him with eyes full of quiet certainty. "It mattered to me the moment you treated me like a person instead of a title." Weeks passed. The building felt different. People greeted each other. Janitors were thanked. Assistants were heard. Daniel walked the halls no longer as a shadow, but as a reminder. Not of humiliation, but of humanity. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Daniel and Claire stood by the window overlooking the streets below. Cars moved. People rushed. Lives crossed without knowing each other's stories. All of this, Daniel said softly, started as a joke. Claire nodded. And ended as a mirror. These stood there in silence, understanding something rare and powerful, that sometimes the deepest change doesn't come from speeches or success, but from one honest moment between two strangers. And somewhere in that building, long after the lights went out, something remained that no one could clean away anymore, the truth that every human being deserves to be seen.